the lesser-known tales of World War I, the Great War that reshaped the world. We often think we know about the major battles, the trenches, the sheer scale of the casualties. But beneath the surface of this global conflict lie countless stories of bravery, ingenuity, and the human spirit that often go untold. These are the stories of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, of forgotten heroes, and of the enduring power of hope amidst unimaginable destruction. Over the next hour, we'll unearth these hidden narratives, exploring the war's far-reaching impact on individuals, cultures, and the course of history. Get ready to journey back in time, to the trenches of France, the fields of Flanders, and the forgotten fronts of a world at war. This is not just a retelling of history, but a visceral encounter with the human experience during one of humanity's darkest chapters. Picture this. Christmas Eve, 1914. The trenches of the Western Front, normally a hellscape of artillery fire and poison gas, fall eerily silent. Imagine the biting cold, the mud, the stench of death lingering in the air, and then something miraculous happens. Across no man's land, the desolate strip of earth separating the British and German lines, come carols sung in hushed tones. The Germans, their voices echoing through the night, begin with Stille Nacht, silent night. British soldiers, initially wary, cautiously respond with carols of their own. Fear gives way to curiosity, then incredibly to a sense of shared humanity. Men who just hours earlier were trying to kill each other now climb out of their trenches. Meeting in the middle, hands outstretched, gifts are exchanged. Cigarettes, chocolates, even a Christmas pudding or two. Stories are shared, photos of loved ones back home passed around. And then, in a moment that seems ripped from the pages of fiction, a football appears, a makeshift game breaks out, enemies now teammates, united by a simple game and the spirit of the season. The Christmas truce was not an official ceasefire, mind you. It was a spontaneous act of defiance against the insanity of war, orchestrated by the soldiers themselves. Generals on both sides were furious when they found out, fearful that this fraternization would undermine the war effort. Orders were issued, threats made, ensuring such a truce would never happen again. But for a brief shining moment, the guns fell silent and humanity prevailed. The Christmas truce stands as a testament to the power of hope, compassion, and the shared bonds that unite us, even in the depths of conflict. It is a stark reminder that even amidst the horrors of war, the human spirit can find a way to shine through. And it serves as a poignant question to us all. If enemies can find common ground in the trenches of war, what is stopping us from doing the same in our own time? The United States Army in World War I was still deeply segregated, yet amidst the prejudice and discrimination rose a unit of African American soldiers who would become legends, the 369th Infantry Regiment, better known as the Harlem Hellfighters. These men, hailing from New York City, faced not only the enemy in the trenches, but also the sting of racism from their own countrymen. Denied the right to train with American weapons or fight alongside their white counterparts, the Harlem Hellfighters were assigned to the French army. The French, who embraced these soldiers with open arms, quickly recognized their courage and tenacity. Armed with French rifles and fueled by a burning desire to prove their worth, the Hellfighters earned their nickname in the trenches of the Western Front. They fought with unmatched ferocity, repelling German attacks, capturing enemy positions and earning the respect of both their allies and their enemies. They spent 191 days in the trenches, longer than any other American unit, and never lost a foot of ground or a man to capture. Their bravery in battle was matched only by their musical talents. The regiment's band, led by the renowned James Reese Europe, introduced the sounds of jazz to war-torn Europe. Their music, a potent mix of ragtime blues and military marches, lifted the spirits of the French people and helped to break down racial barriers. The Harlem Hellfighters returned home as heroes, their sacrifices recognized by the French government with the prestigious Croix de Guerre. Yet, in their own country, they still faced the bitter reality of segregation. Their story is a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity and a searing indictment of the racism that plagued American society. Imagine being trapped, surrounded by the enemy, your supplies dwindling, hope fading with each passing hour. This was the grim reality for the men of the US 77th Division's Lost Battalion in October 1918. Over 500 men, led by Major Charles Whittlesey, found themselves cut off and surrounded deep within the Argonne Forest, their position relentlessly bombarded by German artillery. For 6 days they held their ground, repelling attack after attack, their numbers dwindling with each passing hour. Casualties mounted, supplies ran low, and hope began to dwindle. The battalion's situation seemed increasingly desperate. Their only lifeline to the American lines was cut off, and traditional communication methods failed. Enter Cher Ami, a homing pigeon, one of hundreds used by the US Army Signal Corps during the war. Carrying a message in a canister attached to her leg, Cher Ami took flight, braving enemy fire to deliver a desperate plea for help. The message, scribbled by Whittlesey himself, read, "We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." As Cher Ami flew through a hail of bullets, she was struck in the chest and leg. Yet despite her injuries, she continued her flight, her determination fueled by the lives that hung in the balance. She arrived at her destination exhausted but triumphant, the vital message clutched in her tiny leg capsule. Cher Ami's message reached American commanders, enabling them to pinpoint the lost battalion's location and direct rescue efforts. Though severely wounded, Cher Ami survived, becoming a celebrated hero. Her story, a testament to the unwavering loyalty and sacrifice of animals in war, continues to inspire awe and gratitude nearly a century later. Chapter 4. World War I was a conflict dominated by men, but women played a vital, often overlooked role. One of the most extraordinary stories of female bravery comes from Russia, the story of the Women's Battalion of Death. Picture Russia in 1917. The nation is in turmoil, torn apart by revolution and war. The Tsar has been overthrown, the provisional government struggles to maintain control, and the army, demoralized and on the verge of collapse, faces defeat on the Eastern Front. It is in this chaotic environment that Maria Bochkareva, a peasant woman who had served in the army disguised as a man, steps forward with a radical idea to form an all-female combat unit to shame the men into fighting for their country. Her proposal is met with skepticism and resistance, but Bochkareva, a charismatic and determined leader, ultimately convinces the provisional government to allow her to form the first Russian Women's Battalion of Death. Thousands of women from all walks of life, students, factory workers, peasants, answer Bochkareva's call to arms. They endure grueling training, their determination fueled by patriotism and a desire to prove their worth in a male-dominated society. Armed and ready for combat, the Women's Battalion is deployed to the front lines, where they face not only the enemy but also skepticism and hostility from their own male comrades. They fight with unwavering courage, participating in dangerous reconnaissance missions, repelling German attacks and enduring the horrors of trench warfare alongside their male counterparts. The Women's Battalion quickly earns a reputation for bravery and tenacity, becoming a symbol of hope for a nation teetering on the brink. Though ultimately disbanded after the Bolshevik Revolution, their story serves as a powerful reminder of women's often overlooked contributions to war efforts and their unwavering courage in the face of adversity. Chapter 5. When we think of World War I, images of the trenches of Europe immediately come to mind, but the conflict raged far beyond the Western Front, engulfing vast swathes of the globe, including the African continent. In Africa, the war took on a different character, a brutal guerrilla campaign fought in scorching deserts, dense jungles and rugged mountains. European colonial powers, Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, found themselves locked in a struggle for control of their African colonies, their armies bolstered by native troops. One of the most remarkable figures to emerge from the African theatre was German General Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. Outnumbered and outgunned, Lettow-Vorbeck led his Schutztruppe, a force composed primarily of Askari's native African soldiers, in a brilliant 4-year campaign of evasion and guerrilla warfare against Allied forces. Lettow-Vorbeck's strategy was one of attrition, tying down vast numbers of Allied troops, disrupting supply lines and inflicting heavy casualties. He and his men, masters of camouflage and jungle warfare, became a constant thorn in the side of the Allied powers. The African campaign was characterized by long marches, skirmishes, and brutal battles fought in unforgiving terrain. Disease, starvation, and exhaustion became constant companions for both sides. The war in Africa was a forgotten front for many, but for those who fought and died there, it was just as real, just as brutal as any battle fought in the trenches of Europe. Though ultimately defeated, Lettow Vorbeck's campaign had a profound impact. He became a legend, his name synonymous with guerrilla warfare, and his campaign served as a blueprint for future conflicts. The war in Africa also exposed the hypocrisy of European colonialism, as European powers fought for control of territories while claiming to be fighting for freedom and democracy. Chapter 6. Imagine descending into the bowels of the earth, the air thick with the stench of sweat, damp earth and fear. This was the terrifying reality for the miners of World War I, men who waged a subterranean war beneath the trenches of the Western Front. Tunneling became a grim necessity, a way to break the stalemate of trench warfare. Both sides dug elaborate tunnel networks, creating a labyrinth of underground passages, bunkers, and even hospitals. These tunnels served as vital supply routes, communication lines, and most importantly, a way to plant explosives beneath enemy lines. The work was dangerous and terrifying. Miners faced cave-ins, flooding, and enemy countermining operations. The constant fear of being buried alive or blown to pieces weighed heavily on their minds. They worked in cramped, claustrophobic conditions, the silence often broken by the ominous sound of picks and shovels striking earth or the muffled explosions of enemy mines. One of the most audacious tunneling operations of the war culminated in the Battle of Messines Ridge in 1917. For over a year, British engineers had been secretly digging a network of tunnels beneath the German lines at Messines Ridge, a strategically important position held by the Germans. They planted over 450 tons of explosives in chambers deep beneath the German trenches, creating a massive underground minefield. On the morning of June 7, 1917, the British detonated the mines in a series of deafening explosions that sent shockwaves across the region. The explosions were felt as far away as London, and the resulting craters, some of them still visible today, scarred the landscape like giant pockmarks. The Battle of Messines was a stunning tactical victory for the British, but it came at a high cost, a testament to the brutal nature of underground warfare. War is a crucible of human experience, testing the limits of courage, resilience, and, at times, morality. The story of British soldier Private Henry Tandy, a decorated veteran of the Battle of the Somme, offers a chilling glimpse into the strange twists of fate that war can bring. In September 1918, during the final months of the war, Tandy found himself engaged in heavy fighting near the French village of Marcoing. As he advanced with his unit, he came across a wounded German soldier, alone and unarmed, stumbling towards the British lines. Tandy, exhausted and battle-hardened, raised his rifle, aiming at the German soldier, but something stayed his hand. Perhaps it was the look of fear in the young soldier's eyes, or a flicker of compassion in the midst of the carnage. Whatever the reason, Tandy lowered his rifle, sparing the German's life. The German soldier, overcome with gratitude, nodded his head in silent thanks and disappeared into the fog of war. Tandy thought little more of the incident, dismissing it as just another encounter in the chaotic tapestry of war. Years later, long after the guns had fallen silent, Tandy's story took a chilling turn. In 1938, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain travelled to Germany to meet with Adolf Hitler in a desperate attempt to avert another war. While visiting Hitler's mountaintop retreat, Chamberlain noticed a painting hanging on the wall depicting a scene from the Battle of Menninrode, where Tandy had fought. The painting showed a British soldier carrying a wounded comrade across his shoulders. Hitler, noticing Chamberlain's interest, remarked that the soldier in the painting had spared his life during the war. The soldier in the painting was, in fact, Henry Tandy. Hitler, it turned out, was the wounded German soldier Tandy had spared that day in 1918. It's a chilling thought, a strange quirk of history, that the man who had once aimed his rifle at Hitler, who could have changed the course of history with a single bullet, instead chose mercy